It's the Full Court Press with Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker.
Welcome back to the to the show that we're doing right now.
Following the local teams, breaking down the biggest games with in-depth analysis and team interview. Join the show by calling into 435-752-1069 or text 435-339-0321. It's the Full Court Press.
Rose, and yes! Caught! Touchdown! They did it!
Welcome on in to the Full Court Press. Jason Walker, Eric Frandsen here on 106.9 FM, 1390 AM The Fan. Streaming online at 1069thefan.com and on the 1069 The Fan mobile app. And you can also find us afterward on our podcast feed. You can find that on 1069thefan.com or pretty much wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome on into a Monday edition of the show. Got a lot to talk about in terms of realignment. I don't know if there's news so much that we need to play the little breaking news bit, but still, there's reports, rumors, bunch of different things.
Innuendo?
Yeah, innuendo, anything, cryptic tweets even from university presidents. All that fun stuff happening. So we'll get to that to start the show. And then, of course, we've also got the NBA. The NBA Finals continue. I believe Game 5 is tonight.
Yes.
Had an pretty exciting Game 4. And Game 3 and Game 4 were tied 2 apiece. So this series is pretty much going perfectly. NHL's just been going perfectly because that one's 2-2, isn't it? Or is that one 3-1? I suddenly can't remember. It feels like there's so much time between all these games. Oh, it was 3-2.
Already played a Game 5.
Yeah, they played their Game 5 and it was 3-2.
Florida kind of ran past them.
Forgot they were they're a game ahead of the NBA Finals. So, but we'll get into the NBA Finals, but also kind of more importantly, we're going to get into some offseason trade stuff. One trade has already happened or happening, I guess. I don't know if it's agreed to in principle because the league year doesn't start for another little bit. But Desmond Bane, a player who's on the move. How could that trade impact the Jazz? More so in terms of what price they could ask for certain players, maybe Lauri Markkanen if they end up trading him. And then Kevin Durant potentially being traded. And there's a really roundabout way that I'll tie that trade in to the Jazz. Thought that I certainly had based on reports. Again, it's kind of complicated to say quickly, but we'll get into that later in the hour. And then we got Pick 6 results. See if Eric can finally unseat me from my high horse, where I'm like 2 months in the making.
I'm anxious
of this win streak
and excited, and nervous.
Yeah, nervous. But anyway, let's jump right into conference realignment. Obviously, the biggest thing for the Pac-12 is finding the final member, or at least temporary, or at least short-term answer for a member to get this conference up to its minimum, where they need 8 FBS teams to compete and to be a solvent conference pretty much. And the reporting that's coming through is that Texas State just seems to be far and away the top candidate. ESPN reporting from, I believe, Sunday. Was it Texas State? What was the language they used? The heavy favorite, I think, was the language. Yeah, the heavy favorite per ESPN sources. They are the favorite to be issued a formal Pac-12 invitation. And it's to the point that ESPN is also reporting that the Sun Belt, the conference that Texas State is in, is pretty much already preparing for Texas State to leave. They expect the Bobcats to leave the Sun Belt. And they're already coming up with contingency plans. Have been for a while. But the Mountain West kind of floated an offer out there. I think the language was it was a verbal agreement. But Texas State turned down the Mountain West and is trying to angle itself to be like you get a full share of the media rights deal with the Pac-12. We'll see if they get it. But right now, it's all lining up for Texas State to be the next new member of the Pac-12.
And while initially I don't love this, I mean, this was something that was discussed and has been debated for quite some time. Texas State is not a known property, does not have a history of success, doesn't have a lot of appearances in the top 25. Has it ever been ranked in the top 25?
I don't think so. I
think so.
I can check that, though. Not in football, they've been kind of bad, so.
Well, they've been just as good as UNLV in the past 15 years. They've had as many winning records as UNLV has.
They've only been in FBS for 13. They've never appeared in the AP Top 25 Bowl. They do Top 25 poll, excuse me. They do have back-to-back wins in the First Responder Bowl, for what it's worth. So actually, while I say they've been kind of terrible in football, the last 2 years they've actually been okay.
Yeah.
I might have been mixing them up with somebody else.
So this is from a John Wilner post back in March. Texas State has posted as many winning seasons since moving to the FBS level in 2012 as the Rebels have produced since 2000. And that number is 3. But with Texas State, their pros and cons. The obvious biggest pro is it gets the Pac-12 to 8. But if there's if that's 1A, 1B is that the Pac-12 gets into the state of Texas. Are there other programs that probably would be higher on my list of interest? Yes. But Texas State is going to be the cheapest option while not necessarily totally lowering your standards too far.
Yeah, this isn't adding New Mexico State to the roster. This isn't adding Sacramento State or some other FCS team.
Like Montana schools. So Texas State, the pros here is that it's a growing campus. They're investing in their facilities. Their football stadium is about the size of the one here in Logan.
It's actually bigger.
It's actually a little bit bigger, and they have plans to expand it even further. They've had significant growth in their student population. While it may not be in a large media market or decently sized media market, it is wedged in between two good media markets. So it can kind of peel off of a little bit of both, but
yeah, I think what we talked about this today. What were they technically considered to be in? Were they in the Austin one?
See, that's what I don't know, because they're like right in the middle of between Austin and San Antonio. So I don't know who claims San Marcos as part of their DMA.
Yeah, because I looked it up and I found a reference like which media market every FBS college is considered to be in, and I think Texas State was Austin. But the problem is I may be confusing them with UTSA or North Texas, who are in, UTSA is in San Antonio, North Texas is in the Dallas-Fort Worth one. Texas State might technically be in Austin, I think. I'd have to double-check that. But still, it's the Texas market. It's the same as being in the Texas market as Fresno being in, they're more central California, or like San Jose being in the, what is
the Bay Area, San Francisco, or Utah, Logan being in Salt Lake.
Yeah, like they're technically in the Salt Lake market. I think Wyoming is technically in the Denver market. There are some like that, or I don't know if Wyoming has a dedicated media market.
But I think San Marcos is only 35, 40 miles away from San Antonio and Austin. So it's not like it's that far away from those markets.
Yeah. So the biggest thing though really is it's a recruiting footprint where you're getting to play games in Texas, where there are a lot of high school players who maybe Texas State isn't the team that they know the most, but they'll be on recruiting trips. They'll go to games at Texas State. They'll see Utah State play. And so Utah State will be in the state of Texas pretty consistently. And if they eventually manage to get more teams in the state of Texas, that just increases the footprint. Is it going to be Texas A&M or, University of Texas, those? No, it's not going to be. And you're never going to really be competing with those big dogs. But for the Pac-12 and for all of its schools, getting into Texas has its pros. The question is just how much of a footprint does Texas State give you? because you can't exaggerate that and say, oh, Utah's, the Pac-12 is going to be in Texas and like they're going to have this strong presence. Having Texas State doesn't mean that you're necessarily in Texas and have a strong presence, but you are at least in Texas, in the central time zone. You're in a big population base, so there is at least some presence, and that's worth something at the very least.
Okay, so I looked it up. San Marcos is 41 miles from San Antonio, 41 miles from Austin, 50 miles from San Antonio. So they're probably in the Austin, television market, whatever you want to call it. But either way, I mean, it's that corridor between those two cities is growing, and the population is growing, and it's a fairly large state university. Of course, it fits in with everything else that the Pac-12 is all about these days.
Yeah, all about having state colleges, state universities. So, yeah, it fits in well there. And that's something that, the John Wilner article talked about, where it's the long-term option. And that's where you kind of have to talk yourself into it, because you kind of do. Because Texas State isn't like the super ideal option. And, again, you have to recognize that as well. But that doesn't make them a bad option. And it's also consideration for this could be a good long-term option if things pan out. And it could be a case of, maybe you have to reach down a little bit lower than you were expecting, because their goals were teams like UNLV and Memphis, Tulane, some of the strong schools in the AAC, or UNLV left in the Mountain West. So they have to reach down a little bit further than they were expecting. But this is a case where you reach down and then you pull Texas State up. You could accelerate Texas State's growth by allowing them, again, if it's a partial or full share, I'm not sure, of the media deal, but they'd be getting more money than they would be in the Sun Belt. And they're already investing money. And as you mentioned, their enrollment is going up. I think ESPN reported they set a record enrollment in the last year or so, like 40,000 or something like that.
Yeah, it's a big campus.
So it's a growing college. That's one where maybe you can expect them to get better and better. And we've seen colleges do that. We've seen them rise and get better quickly. Utah State's kind of one of them. I mean, they've been in the FBS, or at least what we would call in our modern day, we would call it FBS, but they grew and then got better in the 2000s, 2010s. They jumped up, they leapt up and became better than they obviously were in the, for most of the 20th century and then in the early 2000s. You could maybe see that from Texas State. And it's a maybe. You can't guarantee that. They could end up coming in and being a bottom feeder. That is a possibility, and a real one at that. But there is a reason that they're getting the consideration from the Pac-12 at this point, because given the Pac-12's options, Texas State is the best one. And it's, at its worst, a decent addition.
Yeah, and here's the other thing about timing. So the schools exiting the Mountain West gave their notice right before June 1st. And there is still a clock ticking here about what's going to be in place for next year. Because you got to get to 8 football playing member schools by July 1st, 2026. And the cost for Texas State to leave the Sun Belt goes from $5 million over these next 14 days. Then it goes to $10 million after July 1st, which isn't necessarily insurmountable for the Pac-12, considering some of the other money they've been throwing around recently. But still, if you can save $5 million, you look to find a way to save $5 million. And so there is a time element here that the Pac-12 needs to figure out. Part of these discussions have been put on hold because of the mediation with what's going on with the Mountain West, with some of those member institutions. Part of it has been on hold because of the House settlement. And the Pac-12, when this first started, was considered a power conference. So it's been involved with a lot of these discussions. It's been involved in a lot of its in the information that's been released afterwards. And there's this whole media deal that's out there that still needs to be solved for the Pac-12 as well. So there's a lot on Teresa Gold's plate and for the other member institutions. But they're trying to, it appears some of this stuff is starting to get a little more crystallized and figured out so they can turn a little bit more attention to this. And it appears that they're running parallel paths here, trying to figure out their media deal while also figuring out who that 8th member school is. And I don't know how one is contingent upon the other, but it sounds like they've got a fair enough information for either one of those to wind things down and to become a little bit more firm on what it's going to look like in the future.
Yeah, things are slowly coming together, emphasis on slowly, because we're just getting more and more reports that are getting more and more confident in their predictions and projections. Because, I mean, ESPN, they're projecting the Pac-12 media deal worth. They're projecting it under $10 million per school, which would be a bit of a disappointment, to be frank. Others have kind of shot back at that, saying it's probably not accurate. But, again, that's what ESPN is hearing, that it's going to be less than. Of course, ESPN is supposedly going to be one of the teams involved. There's rumors that they may be involved in the media deal. So that's a way that they could know that kind of number. But, yeah, everything's just coming together where we still may be another 2 weeks out. Who knows? Because the Pac-12, again, has 2 weeks to procrastinate this before the price tag on taking Texas State out of the Sun Belt goes up. So I'm not going to make any declaration of things being imminent.
Right.
But you can definitely feel that they're getting closer. Not just in the sense that they have to be getting closer because time is running out. That's kind of where we were at the last couple of weeks, where it was like, time's running out, they have to be close. Now the indications are that they're getting pretty darn close. Pretty solid numbers and projections are coming out. There's still a range. Like, some people are confident that it's going to be 11 or 12 million. There's some that are confident it's going to be 15. And there's others that are confident it's going to be like 9 million.
Or 8.
But those, predictions are still coming out and becoming more and more confident. So those kind of numbers are getting leaked from people who were involved in the deal. So I don't know. We may still be 2 weeks out, or 2 weeks out from 2 weeks out, but it's certainly looking like it's becoming clearer and clearer, as opposed to where we were a few months ago, where it's like it could be any number of schools that join the Pac-12. Now it's most likely Texas State, with an outside chance that Memphis joins, likely football only. So it's down to that. UNLV was in the discussion. Now they're pretty much not in the discussion.
Yeah, well, UNLV, that time has now passed for them as well, since they signed that memorandum of understanding with other remaining Mountain West institutions that locked in their media rights with the Mountain West. So there was still that slim window that they could potentially back out of something and not even be a member of that conference before it kicks in, but now it has kicked in. The only other claim could be that the Mountain West does not deliver on what it has promised UNLV and Air Force to stay if through this mediation process the Mountain West does not get that lump of sum from the Pac-12 like they were anticipating. But they're on the hook. They told UNLV and Air Force, we're going to pay you this extra amount of money to stay. And so they're on the hook to make that payment. And I think they would know, the Mountain West would know, that if they don't make good on that, those two schools will bolt. They won't hesitate.
Well, they're already at risk of those two teams bolting in the long term anyway.
Yes.
I think Air Force is eyeing the AAC. And UNLV, I mean, again, delusions of grandeur about the Big 12, but could eventually jump to the Pac-12 if they don't get an offer from the Big 12, and if the dominoes fall their way, who knows? The Pac-12, I think they're eyeing, kind of preying on the downfall of the ACC, preying on that downfall so that maybe they can snag up some of the leftovers, namely Stanford and Cal, to see if they can welcome them back in. As much as Stanford and Cal would probably hate that.
Yeah, I think they would probably try to pursue Big Ten opportunities rather than just go back to the Pac-12.
Well, if the Big Ten would take them, they'd already be there. That's the problem.
Yeah.
If the ACC collapses, Stanford and Cal could end up in the same boat as Oregon State and Washington State.
True.
And so you try and create any conferences even closer to being a pseudo-power conference. But at that point, if the ACC collapses, you end up with the Power 2. You end up with the Big Ten in the SEC.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, super conferences, and then it just it begins to totally change the dynamic of college sports.
Yeah, but that's a discussion for about 2030 or 2032.
Yes.
We'll cross that bridge when we inevitably get there. Speaking of crossing bridges, we got to go and take a break. So we're going to come back and we'll shift our focus to the NBA. Got the NBA Finals, trade talks, trades being agreed to. So we'll have that next here on the Full Court Press.
Rely now on a York Affinity Premium Comfort System to keep your home cool and comfortable. The new Affinity systems are smarter and more connected and more efficient than ever before. And you can cut your energy costs by as much as 50%. Call Advanced Heating and Air Conditioning, your local York dealer, to schedule a free system evaluation. Advanced Heating and Air Conditioning showroom is west of DI and online at advancedheating-ac.com.
We're not comfortable until you are. Advanced Heating and Air. Express Tire, tires for less. In and out with zero stress. Express Tire, tires for less. In and out with zero stress.
Located at 3200 North Main.
Spend less time at the post office. With Formax and Mint mailing systems from Les Olson IT, you can quickly, accurately, and easily process your outgoing mail and even save on postage. Fold your documents, stuff and seal your envelopes, print addresses, weigh and measure to apply proper postage, all with the click of a button. With multiple model options available, you're sure to find a Formax solution and Mint mailing device that perfectly fits your business needs.
Les Olson IT.
S.E. Needham Jewelers has been helping couples celebrate their anniversaries for more than a century. When you present her a piece of diamond jewelry in an S.E. Needham box, it says you are committed to taking care of her forever. We absolutely stand behind our jewelry, our prices, and our service. We always have and always will. This anniversary, give the gift of diamond jewelry. A diamond from S.E. Needham Jewelers says that you plan on being there for the rest of her life, just like we will be. S.E. Needham Jewelers, middle of the block, at the sign of the clock.
The Sportsman on Main Street is loaded with great clothing, shoes, and equipment. This is Mark inviting you to come in and check out our awesome store. For 71 years, we have outfitted you, whether you are going on the trail or to the theater. Trust me, you won't see yourself coming and going as we work hard to have some of the most unique clothing and shoes you will see anywhere. If it's a bike, skis, or a unique clothing and shoes, I promise we will take care of you only at the Sportsman on Main Street in historic downtown Logan with tons of free parking in the back.
Retirement. Are you ready? Adams Wealth Advisors specializes in preparing you for a secure retirement. There's no reason to feel frustrated. The team at Adams Wealth will create a personalized plan that includes timing of retirement, reliable income sources, Social Security, estate planning, and more. Adams Wealth Advisors has a team of CPA, certified financial planners, Social Security experts to help you plan and retire with confidence. Call today, 752-1702, or visit adamswealthadvisors.com. That's adamswealthadvisors.com. Your dream retirement starts here.
It doesn't matter who you root for. The Full Court Press has all the high school sports covered. The Full Court Press. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and online at 1069thefan.com.
Mountain Valley Heating and Air Conditioning wants you to feel the love as they give away and install 5 new furnace and air conditioners to families in need. Mountain Valley Heating and Air is donating HVAC systems, equipment, materials, and installation services to help deserving families who need extra support, and they need your help. Nominate a family in need today. The nominations are open, and they go through August 31st, and at least 5 families will be selected between September and October. Nominate by going to mtnvalleyhvac.com and click on the Feel the Love tab. That's mtnvalleyhvac.com. All right, so looking at the NBA, although real quick, Eric, there's one last point we actually wanted to get to real quick about expansion before jumping to the NBA.
Yeah, actually, before we shift gears totally on that, just getting back to some of these notes from the ESPN article today about the Pac-12 and where it's going to go from here. A little more detail about Memphis. I know we've talked about Memphis as a potential target, which would be great. Travel, a bit of a concern, yes. But it's got a strong football track record. It's been bowling for 10 or 11 straight years. It's been in the top 25 multiple times. It's got a great basketball tradition right now. It's in a good media market. So Memphis checks a lot of boxes. Travel's a bit of a concern, but I think you can overcome that. Here's the challenge with Memphis. According to this article, the Pac-12 initially reached out to Memphis and offered to help them with their AAC buyout, but only offered $2.5 million. The problem is they need a 27-month notice and $25 million to leave. So Memphis is like, that doesn't really help us. So it's a lot more expensive to pull Memphis away. And so as a full institution, and you kind of alluded to this earlier too, there's this other possibility that maybe Memphis divides what it does. It sends its football to the Pac-12 and it sends everything else to the Big East. It helps the Pac-12 get to that number that it needs. Travel, not as big of a concern for football. Big East, still a solid basketball program for what they need to do. But they still need to figure out, for the Memphis point of view, is would this move help us get to that same level financially as where we're at, or even a little bit more in the AAC? And so any talk about Memphis is probably not anything imminent, but maybe a few years down the road. Once the Pac-12 looks like it's stable and performing, then Memphis might look like the next wave of expansion for the Pac-12.
Yeah, because the Pac-12 likely needs to just get something get something done short term because they have to. And that's where Texas State kind of fills that gap.
Yes.
And then you begin looking at 5-6 years down the line, maybe before then, but within the next 5 or 6 years, you begin.
This is estimating 27, 28.
Yeah, so that's one where it could be still somewhat short term.
Yeah.
But through the next 5 or 6 years, you're looking at expanding. That's where you look at UNLV, which that one we're looking at 6 years down the line, 6 or 7 years. But Memphis as well could look at others in the AAC where you can have the time to give that notice, maybe have some of the buyouts be a little smaller.
Yeah. So, yeah, bottom line, it's looking more and more that Texas State is the school. There's a lot of about UTSA that I like. They play in a 66,000 indoor arena. They're in a nice big media market. There's not a whole lot of other competition in town. So if they do well, they've got a huge upside. Texas State is not in the middle of nowhere, but they're not in as big of a market. But they are a growing institution that is throwing a lot of its resources into expanding and improving its facilities. So couldn't be that long where Texas State becomes a little bit more of a known property out there.
Yeah, and like with the Pac-12, if you can't find the known quantities, like in Memphis, then you got to go for the school that's growing.
Yeah.
And that appears to be Texas State.
Right. You got to pay for somebody who's on the up, or you have to pay out the nose to get somebody who's out there and already established, or you can find somebody who's on the up and it doesn't cost as much, but you just hope that their trend continues.
Yeah. All right, so let's shift now to the NBA. And we have the NBA Finals, and should be a good one. We're at, of course, the NBA Finals and the Stanley Cup Finals. Both series that went 2-2. Of course, the Stanley Cup Finals now, it's 3-2. Florida leading that one. So Edmonton, trying to be the hope of all Canada, finally end that streak of Canada teams not winning the Stanley Cup. But in the NBA, how surprised are you this series is tied 2-2?
I don't know. Well, honestly, I thought that at this point it'd probably be more 3-1 for Oklahoma City before the series began. But as it has been going, I've really enjoyed it. I don't think I would have guessed that each team would split at home. But it's been fun. I think we really only had one game where it wasn't really in question. Both games have had moments where it's been back and forth. Game 1, Oklahoma City was mostly in control until the last 6 minutes, 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Even the last 3 minutes.
Yeah, well, they were in control up until suddenly they were trailing with 0.3 to go.
Right. So it's been fun. I've enjoyed it. Learning more about some of these players that I had forgotten about. I didn't even remember that TJ McConnell was still in the league.
Yeah, I keep forgetting about him. He's always solid wherever he's been.
Yeah, but you're just learning more about these young players who are kind of coming into their own. You know, Jalen Williams and even Nembhard for Indiana, Mathurin. It's been fun watching these up and coming players step into these big moments. But you also see the Stars have had great moments as well. And Oklahoma City is pretty heavily favored tonight, 9.5. But, man, I'd put, if I were a betting man, and I'm not, I'd put the money on the Pacers to at least cover, to keep it close, because that's what they've proven they can do.
Yeah, the Pacers have just basically been the perpetual underdog. It's been... first it was Thunder in 4 or 5 games, depending on how generous you want to be to the Pacers. Then it was like, all right, Thunder in 5 after the Pacers win game 1. And then they win game 2. So it's like, all right, things are going pretty well. And the Pacers win game 3. And so it's okay, Thunder in 6 now. Because it's like, and then we get to the point where it's 2-2. And it's like, this is a series. And it's a fantastic series. There were series that we expected to be closer that ended up being like 4-1. Some of the old, like Heat Spurs series, some of the Warriors Cavs series were like expecting it to be really exciting, and then it's over in like 4 or 5 games. And this one, where I think everyone was expecting it to be a 4 or 5 game series, it's turned into, well, at minimum 6. And so I think it's been fantastic. We've seen those back and forth. We've seen, and it's basically been the best kind of series. Because sometimes I've put out the question, would you rather have a series that goes to 7 games but every game is a blowout? Or would you rather have a series that's a sweep but every game is like a 1-point game? Because there's 2 different kinds of enjoyment in that. There's the drama of a series going back and forth between each game. Then there's just the live in the moment, it's a really exciting game. But maybe some of that drama goes away when it's like 3-0. And then, eventually like, 4-0.
Yeah.
But we basically had the best of both worlds because, again, 3 of the 4 games have been close. Down to the last 4 or 5 minutes. And even like to the last minute, you think both teams are still in it.
Yeah. I mean, through 4 games, the point differential through 4 games, 6 points.
Yeah. And there's not been too many outliers on either side. So it's just close games for the most part. Again, 3 of the 4 games have been close. And it's a 2-2 series. So you're getting everything you want. Games that are down to the wire, and they're going both ways. And the NHL is the same way, where it's like almost every game's gone to overtime.
Yes.
So those have obviously been exciting. So we're being treated very well in our June sports with the NBA and NHL finals.
Yeah, unfortunately, the ratings don't support how fun these games have been, which is weird. But whatever. But this is how America discovers new stars. This is how we get to know the next opportunity, the next faces of the league. Does this series lack some of the familiar big stars? Yes. But how do they become familiar and big stars? Through big moments. And that's what this NBA Finals is starting to produce. Well, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander took over in Game 4 and scored the last 11 points himself to will his team to victory. And then we've seen what Tyrese Halliburton has done with last-second shots and willing his teams the victories as well. So that's how these stars become known. It may be a little bit rough in the beginning, but this is where it starts. And for those that get to be a part of it at the early stages, that's what's fun, because then you can see how they grow and develop from here.
And I think you also need to find a way to establish rivalries and drama, because that's one of the things that people will tune in for is the drama. There's obviously the draw of certain players who just have, gravity or gravitas, if you want to use a fancy word. Guys like LeBron James and Steph Curry, guys who just draw people in to watch them because of who they are. But part of it is because they became established. There was a point in Steph Curry's life where nobody cared who he was. Even several years in the NBA, nobody cared. Then he became a star, and everyone has to watch him. And that's where these guys can emerge in that sense. These must-watch players, but much like you had the Cavaliers-Warriors rivalry brewing, maybe you can develop something like that. Like the Pacers and Knicks are starting to become a bit of a rivalry there.
Yes.
Where the Knicks do not necessarily like the Pacers, and especially not Tyrese Halliburton. No. The way a couple of different series have gone now.
Well, and look, this has gone 4. We know there's going to go. We know we have at least 2 more games on the schedule, and this started to be a little more evident in Game 4, where these teams are starting to get a little bit tired of facing each other, and they both play aggressive physical defense. I think we're going to start to see more chippiness in Games 5 and 6, and if we're lucky, a Game 7. And so that's where it gets a little bit spicy, gets a little saucy. You want to tune in, like, ooh, can you believe he went after that guy? How are they going to defend him? Are they going to stand for that? So I think that's what I'm anticipating. If it's a close game, we're going to see more of that. If it's a blowout, then that doesn't really happen that much.
Yeah, and we hope not to see some blowouts after we've had 4 stellar games. But, yeah, you'd hope that more people would tune in. Not that I, at this point, care. I know that people are just not going to watch it because it doesn't have what they want. I'm not going to force you. I'm not going to sit you in front of the TV and peel your eyes and say, watch Shai Gilgeous-Alexander because you have to.
Right.
I'm not going to make you become a believer. But I got a mic in front of me, so I got to say how much I'm loving this series and how amazing it is. And, again, if you're a basketball fan, you should be watching it.
Well, and really it's like, will Jalen Williams, like how effective is he going to be tonight? Chet Holmgren, will he impact the game beyond the first quarter? So these are some of the things that Oklahoma City's got to get dialed in a little bit more. And then for Indiana, their role players were great in Gainbridge Fieldhouse. How well are they going to be able to play at, PKC Arena, whatever it's called?
It used to be called like Chesapeake Energy or something like that. But and I always remembered I always read it as Cheapskate Arena. Because apparently I have mild dyslexia.
It's not that far off.
It's only a couple letters.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And so those are some of the interesting storylines coming in tonight's game, 6:30 on ABC.
Yeah, should be a fun one. Tune in. Let's take a break. When we come back, there's trades afoot. One has already been either agreed to in principle or is going to be executed. I can't remember because there's timelines with the beginning of the league year. I don't think they can technically make a trade until then, but they've at least agreed in principle. And then other potential trades. And we'll talk about how all these tie into the Utah Jazz, because the Jazz aren't directly involved in any of these potential trades, but they could be involved in a roundabout way in both of them. So we'll get to that next here on the Full Court Press.
At Mountain Valley Heating and Air Conditioning, Feel the Love is more than just heating and cooling. It means giving back. 5 complete HVAC systems will be donated to a deserving person or family. Feel the love and nominate that person or family in need at mtnvalleyhvac.com. Nominate prior to September 1st, 2025. See website for all details.
The patio is open. The chips are endless. Drinks on tap. You know it's got to be Cafe Sabor, Cache Valley's best Mexican restaurant, gold winner in the Best of Northern Utah contest. Experience Locals Day every Thursday with a huge burrito, endless chips and soda, only $7.95. That's a complete lunch for just $7.95. Finding any lunch under $10 is nearly impossible. Every Thursday, drinks, chips, and massive burrito, just $7.95. The patio, the sun, the fun at Cafe Sabor in the historic train station on 6th Weston Center in Logan.
This is Jordan with Primrose Home Care and Hospice. As I visit with people on a regular basis, I see many things we can help with. Recent falls, balance training, knee, shoulder, and hip surgeries, memory loss, housekeeping, help with medications, and that's not all. We at Primrose offer the best care in any situation. A great example of this is our preventative care program. While working with your doctor and using our personal approach, we can help prevent many of these situations. For more explanation, visit primrosecare.com or call me at 787-1369. Primrose Home Care and Hospice. We're your home team.
They can put your logo on it because that's what they do at the Logo Shop. They can put your logo on anything from pens and mugs to golf balls and clocks. The Logo Shop is also the place for your team shirts and uniforms. So if your team wants to look good, call the Logo Shop and order your team uniforms today. Colors, logo, and everything else looking just like you want it to. Get your team shirts and uniforms from the Logo Shop. Call them to get a bid or just drop by 40 South Main in Logan.
The Logo Shop. Logo Stop. The Logo Shop.
No matter what the conditions, DD Auto and Salvage can get your vehicle up and off your property. Now is the time to plan to make extra cash by calling DD Auto and Salvage and moving that old vehicle. Let them pay you for that junk vehicle. DD Auto and Salvage makes it so easy to get rid of your junker vehicles, paying you the most money possible. If you have metal, DD Auto and Salvage in Logan wants to pay you today. Call 787-1204.
That's 787-1204 today.
See store for details.
This is Catherine Buse with Cache Valley Bank, and we understand that concerns about fraud can weigh heavily on you. Your peace of mind is important to us. That's why we're committed to looking out for you and your family. Our team keeps a vigilant eye on your account. If you ever have concerns or need support, we're just a call or visit away. Whether you need advice or just someone to talk to, our friendly staff is ready to help. We're more than just a bank. We're your neighbors, and we care about your security. Visit your local branch today. Cache Valley Bank, member FDIC.
Join the show by calling 435-752-1069 or text 435-339-0321. It's the Full Court Press with Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker.
Sports of Logan has a brand new service center that can handle any make, any model 100% of the time. The trained technicians know Can-Am, Kawasaki, KTM, Polaris, Sea-Doo, and more inside and out. They work with any brand, any model. Young Power Sports of Logan has the tools and experience to keep your ride in peak condition. Google Young Power Sports of Logan for Cache Valley's premier power sports service department.
Sorry, before we get into this trade talk in the NBA, real quick, Ross Dellinger reporting that the NCAA Football Oversight Committee is providing recommendation not to support the waiver request from Sacramento State, who is seeking to transition up to FBS. They would be an independent.
Unless they have an invitation from a conference, they need a waiver, which would allow them to be independent. And Ross Dellinger reporting that they're not necessarily going to get that waiver.
Right. It's looking like the recommendation is not to grant that waiver to Sacramento State.
Dark day for Sacramento State's president, who basically described them as playing in JV since they're in the FCS, which didn't make their FCS counterparts very happy.
No, I don't imagine it would.
On the Young Power Sports text line, 8968, saying it didn't take long for me to appreciate the local sports station for sports at 4 p.m. I ran into advertisements about the middle of town and lasted clear till I got home in the south of the valley. I know bills need to be paid, but enough. Oh, wait, hold on. Am I reading this?
So much for Brand X. Okay.
Oh, sorry. Sorry if we're running the ads. We got to run some of them. On the got to pay the bills.
Yep, got to pay the bills. Got to keep the lights on.
That's how we keep this stuff free. So
that's your cost for being able to tune into this totally free to you entertainment and information system.
That's how we do it.
Yeah.
Although, speaking of the NCAA, I had a column of sorts on Cache Valley Daily, basically giving my thoughts on the NCAA. They're very optimistic about how they're operating things post-House settlement. My thoughts are everyone should really be skeptical about that. So there's your another advertisement. You can go read my thoughts on Cache Valley Daily. But shifting back to our NBA discussion, but heading into some of the recent trade deals, a recent trade deal, the Grizzlies are trading Desmond Bane, the man who should have been drafted by the Utah Jazz. Instead, Dennis Lindsay decided that drafting a player projected to go about pick 45, they would take him at 27, Udoka Azubuike, and they would pass on the most obvious option in the world, Desmond Bane. I think was already falling at that point. Passed on him. Now Desmond Bane just got traded for, I believe, 4 unprotected first-round picks, and I think another pick swap to the Orlando Magic.
In addition to other established players.
Yeah, so it's just crazy. And there's a lot of talk that's been going on today about this trade, and even last night. So the news broke last night. So there's a lot to go with that. There's a lot that's been discussed. Like, did the Magic overpay for Desmond Bane? You could probably argue yes, but remember Drew Holiday was acquired for like 3 or 4 first-round picks. Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert. Like, people said that, the Minnesota Timberwolves got fleeced by the Jazz for offering a boatload of picks for Rudy Gobert. This kind of ends up being in a similar vein where somebody's maybe overpaying in principle, but they're paying that premium because they're identifying the guy they want to help them take the next step. Timberwolves got Rudy Gobert to take the next step. Cavaliers got Donovan Mitchell to take the next step, paid out the nose to do so. The Celtics paid out the nose for Drew Holiday. They were trying to take the next step. And that's what the Orlando Magic are trying to do. They have a really exciting young core. Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner. You can even throw Jalen Suggs in there, who's overcome a bit of a rocky start to his career, despite being picked 5th overall, I think. And he's been getting better. Yeah, Desmond Bane to that, another good scoring wing. Desmond Bane came in as like a 3-and-D prospect.
Yeah.
He'd hit 3-pointers, play good defense. He does both of those and just scores in general, where he's north of 20 points per game for his career. So it's an interesting discussion, but the question all comes back, how does it impact the Jazz? And I think in particular, this is setting the trade market for what you have to pay if you want that final piece. Ideally, namely, if the Jazz are going to trade Lauri Markkanen, this is what it's going to cost. This is basically
at least.
I think at least, but I think this ends up being a fairly 1-to-1 comparison. If the Jazz traded Lauri Markkanen, this is the kind of package they would get. Because Desmond Bane, isn't he like a one-time All-Star or close to it?
I don't know if he ever made an All-Star game.
Yeah, he was kind of close to it. He probably never did make it, but fringe All-Star type of player, can be a great secondary scorer on a team and add value in other ways. Lowry does in different ways, where he has that unique ability to be a slasher and shooter, and he's a good rebounder, and has good size for being a power forward, small forward type. Desmond Bane brings his in other ways by, being a good 3-and-D wing, along with other great scoring. So they're different types of players, but they're in that same kind of role for roster building. Different positions, but similar kind of role, where it's like you're that second or third best player on a championship team. But that's the price that's being paid for a second or third best player on a championship team. So,
yeah, and so how does that reset them, or how does it affect what Utah could be involved with this summer in the offseason? It's kind of crazy that somebody like Desmond Bane gets that on first glance, but if you look deeper into who he is and what he produces and how he helps a team, it kind of makes some sense. And look, Orlando's not that far away from being a top-tier team in the Eastern Conference. So getting a little bit more depth, more options, somebody who doesn't crowd the space of some of their other stars, it makes a lot of sense for Orlando. Watch out for the Magic next year. They should be really good.
By the way, 8968 throwing us bone after our awkward moment there, saying it was a Salt Lake station, so he wasn't complaining about us.
Oh,
so
okay.
That makes me feel a little bit better about it. I would say the advertisements for about 20 minutes, or an advertising commercial or a commercial break.
That seems ridiculous.
That is a little ridiculous. Yeah. It's a little crazy. But the only time we have 20-minute commercial breaks is when we're having technical difficulties with one of our high school streams.
Very rare. Yeah.
So, anyway, glad you're listening, A96A, and then everyone else listening. We can make it through the ad breaks together.
Yes,
help us pay the bills, and of course support the local businesses that support our stations.
Makes it even better.
So.
Yeah, but if other players, there's probably going to be other players moved, other significant players, even maybe players worth more than Desmond Bane that are going to be on the move. We've already heard that Kevin Durant is likely to be moved from Phoenix, and he's going to come out and said, these are the places where I'd be interested in going, which that sounds like San Antonio, Miami, and
I think Houston is one of them.
So, if a player like that, Giannis Antetokounmpo could be another player that's on the move. I don't think that the Jazz, and we've discussed this, Utah's not necessarily a destination for any of those guys. But they could be involved to help make the financials work, to make the rosters work. So Utah could be involved in some of the stuff that happens here in the offseason in moving guys like John Collins or Jordan Clarkson who have value, but also have some contracts that can help.
Yeah, and we'll need to get into that later. We may have to push that to another day, but we got to take a break. When we come back, we got Pick 6 results. We'll see if Eric managed to unseat me from my winning streak. We'll have that next here on the Full Court Press.
Hi, this is Robbie with LSS Insurance. If you're about to turn 65, the Medicare phone calls, mailers, and emails can be unreal. Out-of-market telemarketers simply do not understand Utah, Idaho, or your individual situation. We have real answers and real solutions with local help. At LSS Insurance, we are your health insurance specialists. Call us 752-9493. Having local help makes all the difference, and there's no cost to you. Call 752-9493 or visit lssins.com.
Honey, the garage door won't close again. It's the sun hitting the sensors. I just fixed this.
Toilet paper rolls are not a fix. Is there something we can do?
Actually, yeah. Advanced Garage Door has these new sunshades that block direct light from the garage door sensors. Let me give Mason a call.
Is your garage door not closing? We can fix that. Call Advanced Garage Door at 435-255-6725. That's 435-255-6725. Or visit us at advancedgaragedoors.com.
Do you have a fireplace or stove that isn't working right? Why wait until next winter to get it fixed? Get ahead of the game and get your fireplace or stove serviced now by Advanced Fireplace and Stove. They service everything from Quadra-Fire pellet stoves to heat and glow fireplaces. Get a 20% discount on your next service and labor when you mention this ad. Call 752-7272 or go to advancedfireplaceandstove.com. Advanced Fireplace and Stove, where comfort is their business.
Daryl's is your local Wolf, Sub-Zero, Thermador, and Cafe appliance dealer. This is Jay with Daryl's Appliance. We have been authorized dealers for over 45 years and have the best prices, including builder pricing and instant rebates on new builds and remodels. When Daryl's installs your Wolf and Sub-Zero appliances, you qualify for an extra year on your warranty. Call, text, or drive out for a free consultation with one of our experts. Top-of-the-line appliances deserve top-of-the-line service. Only at Daryl's Appliance, west on Airport Road.
Need a reliable partner for your medical needs? Look no further than Triton Medical and Transportation. We offer top quality medical soft goods right here in your community. From incontinence supplies and oxygen needs to medical transportation. Whatever you need to stay comfortable and healthy, we've got you covered. Trust Triton Medical and Transportation, caring for our community with every step, every mile. Call us today at 435-557-6687 or visit us online at mytritonsupply.com. Triton Medical and Transportation, because your health matters.
When grid failures and severe weather cause power outages, your business might take a hit, or at home, you could lose your refrigerated food storage. Generac Standby Power Solutions help ensure an uninterrupted power supply. Generac is the #1 brand of standby generators. Get yours today from Golden Spike Electric. Electric, your trusted source for safety and security. Golden Spike Electric, powering your peace of mind. Online at gsegenerators.com or call 257-3016. They also service other models.
It's the Full Court Press with Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker.
Weather is hotter and Napa has what you need to be prepared. Napa Legend and Napa AAA batteries get a $25 rebate on Bosch lithium-ion batteries, and they'll even test yours. See if you actually need a battery that needs to be replaced. Mention this ad. You can also get Napa 15W Premium Diesel Oil for $11.99 a gallon, cash and carry only. All that and more at your local Napa Auto Parts stores from Preston to Providence. Eric, we got to sprint through pick 6 here. And starting with the lines I had, Cadillac, their highest finish among their hypercars, the 24 Hours of Le Mans, we both took the under. They had the pole position. The line was set at 3.5. We both took the under, but their highest finishing car was 5th.
Ooh.
Which isn't bad, but
not bad,
no,
but
they're
not
looking
good
for
enough.
So you both missed on that one. Jalen Williams, points and rebounds in Game 4, over under 27.5. You took the over, I took the under. He had 34, 27.7 rebounds. U.S. Open players under par. I was horrible on this line I said. I said 11.5. I took the over, you took the under. There was one person
Only
finished
one.
under par, and he won it all. So you're up 2-0. Max Fried, strikeouts versus Boston on Sunday, over under 4.5. I took the under, you took the over. He had 9 in that game. COC Mariner yards versus the Defenders, over under 25.5. I took the over, you took the under. He hit the over, and then Max Verstappen finish in the Canadian Grand Prix, over under 2.5. I hit the over, and you missed on the over, but you won pick 6, to put it simply.
Woo!
And I got to finish. We're overtime here.
Go.
Have a good one, everybody.
I'm Dan Patrick, and this is Above the Noise. It wasn't Rory, it wasn't Bryson, it wasn't Scotty, but it was one of the most impressive U.S. Open wins we've seen in a long time. J.J. Spaun walked on to Oakmont as an afterthought. He walked out a champion. No flash, no fanfare, just steady, soul-grinding golf on a course that chewed up and spit out the sport's biggest stars. Spaun was the only player in the entire field to finish under par. The final round was a war of attrition. Oakmont, soaked in rain, guarded by thick rough, and offered no forgiveness. But when others crumbled, Spaun held firm. His tee shot on 17 was arguably the shot of the tournament. And on 18, nerves rattling across the leaderboard, Spaun buried a magnificent putt to seal a 2-shot win. It wasn't sexy, but if you understand the game, understand what Oakmont demands, then you recognize what J.J. Spaun did. As Rich Lerner said on Golf Channel, J.J. Spaun didn't just beat the best, he beat the beast. I'm Dan Patrick, and this is Above the Noise.